Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm going to be going over how to add character customization to your games in the Blender game engine. So as you can see here, I have my character, and if I use the arrow keys, I can go ahead and give him different accessories or different hats. And so in this tutorial, we're going to be going over how to set that up, and then also once you've selected one, you can press enter, and you'll be taken to the game where the character will now have the selected hat and we'll be wearing it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is click File New, open up a new blend file, change it to Blender Game Engine, GLSL, animation frame rate of 60, X to delete the cube, Shift A, and add a plane. So now what I'm going to do is add in my game character just with File and Append. So here I have my character, so I'm just going to make sure he's on the floor, like so. And then what I'm going to do is go over into texture mode. Then I'm going to select the point lamp and choose Hemi, and maybe an energy of 0.6. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is move the camera here to a suitable view. So Shift F in camera view, and you can just use WSAD to move around. And something like that should be good. Now what we need to do to add accessories to our character is to have a spawn point for the hats to spawn at. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, add an empty, and we'll go to Cube. Then I'm going to move this up, put it roughly in the location we want the hats to spawn, and just scale it down. Then we're going to call this hat empty. And then what I'm going to do is select my player rig. Then I'm going to go over here into pose mode. And then what I'm going to do is select this top head bone here. So this has to be the bone that controls the entire head. Now I'm also going to go into wireframe just to make sure that only this head bone is selected and nothing else. Then we're going to go into object mode. Then I'll select my empty, hold down shift, select an armature, and press Ctrl P and parent to bone. Now what that will have done is parented this to that one head bone that we had last selected. So again, selecting the player armature, going into pose mode, and now the empty should move with the head. Alright, so back into texture mode, and now what we're going to do is we'll go back into object mode, and now we'll add some random hats for our player to spawn. Here, just quickly Shift A, add a circle. This can be my first hat, move it up, then Tab to go into edit mode, and then E to extrude, S to scale, and we'll just have a very simple hat, like a cone. So Alt M, and at center. Alright, Tab, and back to object mode. Here we'll select smooth, and we'll give it a nice material, so maybe a yellow color. No specular, and down here we'll also turn off back facing, so we can see underneath it as well as on top. Alright, so this is my first hat. Now what I want to do is make a couple others, so we have some variation. So again, add another circle, move it over here. This time let's make a sun hat. So again, edit mode, E to extrude, S to scale, move it in, move it up slightly, E, S, move it up again, and then E, S, and all the way up the top. E, S, move it up, and then F to make a face. Alright, so that seems like a good sun hat. Now I'm also going to select the edges in edit mode, and then E to extrude, S to scale, and just move them up, like so. Then under shading, I'm going to select smooth. Then again, under the materials, we'll give it a new material, and give it a brown color. Alright, so something like that. If you want to, you can give them textures as well. I'm just going to keep it simple. Then I'm going to add one more, so Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift A, add a circle. So this time we're going to have a cap, like you saw at the start. Then again back to object mode, and we'll select smooth. So here let's add ourselves another color, and let's make it a blue color. Alright, and turn back facing off as well for both. Alright, so here are our three different hats. Now what we're going to do is spawn them in accordingly. So first of all what we're going to do is give them names. So this one can be hat 1, this one here can be hat 2, and the last one here can be hat 3. Then I'm going to select all three and press M and move it to layer 2. Now what I'm going to do is select my main empty here, and then we'll go to default and change it to game logic. And now what we'll do is add a property, and this is going to be called selected. Then I'm going to change it to an integer, and here we'll add a keyboard for the right arrow, another one for the left arrow. Let's call this one right, and call this one left. And then here we'll add a property and another property, and join the two together. Then under the first one, click add, and we'll choose selected 1. So it's going to add 1 to the property selected. Here again add selected but -1. Then minimize both of those, minimize these two, and minimize these two. Now we need limits, so we need to add a property here that's going to be greater than 0 before we can minus something. Then add another property here, and this is going to be selected is less than the maximum number of hats, so in this case 3. And connect this one up with the right, so this one here can be our min for minimum, and this one here can be max for our maximum. Alright, minimize those two, and now just to test it out, go into the debug properties, and then select the eye here. Now if you go into texture mode and press play, you should now be able to change the property from 0 to 3. Alright, so once we've got that working, here we're going to add a property, and this is going to be when it's equal to 0, and then we'll add selected is equal to 0. Here add an AND controller, and we'll just leave that for now. Alright, next one, here add a property 1 when it's equal to 1, add an AND controller, and next one. So now what we need to do is spawn in the correct hat that corresponds with the property. So to do that, let's add an edit object, and we're going to have to add this for every single hat. So in this case we only need 3. Now when property is equal to 0, it basically means unequipped. So that just means we don't have any hat at all. So here I'm going to join in number 1, and I'm going to join that to the first one and call this number 1. And then this one number 2, we'll join it in with the second, and number 3 with the third. For the first one we'll select hat 1, and then second one hat 2, and third one hat 3. Alright, so minimize all of those. Then what we need to do is, if we do currently spawn them in, they'll spawn on top of each other. The old ones won't get removed. So what we need to do is add messages to remove the previous hats. So under the actuators, add 3 message actuators. So 1, 2, 3. And then this one here is going to be called end hat 1. Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste, end hat 2. And the same down here, end hat 3. So now for our first hat, we want to get rid of hat 2 and hat 3 if they exist. And so for hat 2, we want to get rid of hat 1 and hat 3 if they exist. And for hat 3, we want to get rid of 1 and 2 if they exist. Now for hat 0, we want to get rid of all 3, because we don't want any of them to be present. Alright, so minimize all of those, and now we'll go over to layer 2 with our hats. Now on the first hat here, add in always, add a parent, and join the two together. Now here what we'll do is under the parent, we'll select hat empty. Then after you've added that, we're going to add a message, and this is going to be end hat 1. And once we receive that message, we want to remove the parent. And then additionally, we want to also end the object. So here, edit object, end object, and minimize all of those. Now what we want to do is transfer this hat logic to our second and our third hat. So to do that, we're going to select the second one first, hold down shift, select the first one, go to object, game, and then copy logic bricks. Do it again for the last one, so select the one you want to copy to, hold down shift, select the one with the current logic bricks, and then go to game, copy logic bricks. Alright, so now all we need to do is change the message here to end hat 2, and on the last one we need to change it to end hat 3. Alright, so now back to layer 1, and now if we press numpad 0 and press play, we can skip along the hats and we'll have different ones added. So now you'll notice when we do add different hats, they are above the actual player's head. So to adjust for that, let's move down our empty, and then also let's rotate it a bit. So RX and rotate it this way. So now if you press play and add the different hats, they'll look a bit better integrated. Now you notice they are still sort of clipping off, so I'm going to move it back slightly. Press play and just test it out again. Now you'll notice hat 1 and hat 2 seem to be fine, but hat 3 doesn't really work with the cap. So to fix that, what you can do is go over into layer 2, and we can just scale up our hat number 2. So S to scale, and then go back to layer 1, try it out again, until we have something that fits. So that looks a bit better. So on my character here, I'm going to add an always on a true pulse. We'll join it in with an and I've already set up a idle animation for our character to play. And if you add hats to him, the hats will follow with the animation. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save our settings and then load it into a new scene. So first what we have to do is call this choose hats, and this is going to be our choose hat scene. And then what we're going to do is add a new scene, copy settings, and this is going to be called game. So this is going to be the game which a player can actually play. Here I'm going to press Shift A, add a plane, S to scale, and then we'll add ourselves a hemi as before. Alt R to get rid of rotation and just move it up. Maybe turn down the brightness. And then what I'm going to do is go over to number 1. Then what I'm going to do is go here into wireframe, and then we're going to select all of our player. So B to box select and drag it over the whole player. Now you'll notice other objects also get selected, so press C and then tap the middle mouse button to deselect objects. So with C selected, I'm just going to tap the scroll wheel and it should get rid of that. Now what I'm going to do is press Shift D to duplicate and move it over here. Press Ctrl L, make links to our game. Then I'm going to press X and delete. Now in our game we should have our different object. So if we go over into texture view, we'll have our new character. Now on our hat spawn here, we're going to select it and we're going to delete all this logic. So just get rid of it as we no longer need it. Then we're going to go back into choose hat and we're going to write a quick script to save our settings. So here I'm going to add a new text block and we'll call this one equip.py. Then in the first line here, import BGE. Then I'm going to define a function def and I'm going to call this set hat. CONT for the current controller, a colon, next line, own is equal to cont.owner. So this is just referring to the object that the script is running on. Then what we want to do is we want to get this own property here and we want to save it to a file. So to do that, I'm just going to be using the global dictionary. So to get the global dictionary, I'm going to type in bge.logic.global dictionary. And from that, we want to have a key that we enter in that points to this value here. So basically, we're just adding an entry for this value that we can later look at. So I'm going to add a square bracket, and this entry I'm going to go ahead and call hat. Then closing quotation marks, closing square bracket is equal to, and we're going to set this to be equal to our property here. So to do that, I'm going to type in own, and then a square bracket, a quotation mark, and we just want the name of the property here. So own is the selected controller, and it's going to be getting it from that object and putting it in here. So closing quotation mark, closing square bracket, and then we'll press enter. So now that we've modified the global dictionary, we need to save our variables. So let's type in bge.logic.save global dictionary, and then we'll add 2 round brackets to call a function. Now we can press enter twice, shift tab to go to the start of the line, def to define a new function, and call this get hat, cont. Again, this name, you can call it whatever you want, just sort of set hat and get hat makes sense. So own is equal to cont.owner, and then what I'm going to do is we want to load in our global dictionary, so copy and paste this line, and instead of save, change it to load. Now once we've loaded it in, we want to get this hat value, so again, just to do that, copy and paste this. It will basically return the key, which we have assigned it to here. So let's call our key here chosen hat is equal to, and then this. So this is going to return this value, and that will get put into here. So now what we want to do is check this value here and see what it's equal to. So if chosen hat is equal to 1, then we want to add hat number 1. So added is equal to own.scene.add object, and here we want the name of our first hat. Now in our game we don't actually have any hats on layer 2 yet. So let's go over to our chosen hat and go over to layer 2 and copy across our different hats. So Shift D to duplicate, Control L, make links to game, X and delete. Now in game, check that they're there on layer 2, and they are, so that's fine. So now what we need to do is spawn in these different hats accordingly. So we want to spawn in hat 1.001. So select this name here, Control C to copy, and spawn it in. So if selected is equal to 1, it's going to spawn in this hat. Then a comma, own, to spawn it where we have the starting object, and then a comma and 0. So that just means that the lifetime is infinite. Now at the end of the line, press enter, and we need to parent this object as soon as we've added it. Added.set parent. Now on our current hat logic, what we're doing is we are already parenting and then removing the parent. As you'll notice here, we can do almost exactly the same thing in Python with one line of code. So again, I'm just doing that just because I can, but if you want to, you can use logic bricks. Basically in here what you do is put in hat empty.001. So instead of that, what we're going to do is copy and paste this name and put it in our script here. So quotation mark and then hat empty.001 and then another quotation mark, and in here we'll put in 1, so we want it to display, and then 0 because we don't need any physics. Then enter, and then shift tab because that's all we need, and then copy and paste this line and paste it in like so. Put EL, so else if, at the start, check if it's equal to 2, and again do it for hat number 2. Alright, last time, copy this in, enter, shift tab, paste it in, check for number 3, and add in number 3. Now because we've done almost exactly the same thing with a couple lines of code, we no longer need any logic on the hats, so we can just go ahead and get rid of them. Now on each of our hats here, we have to also make sure under the physics that it's no collision, otherwise we'll get weird things happening. And then also back on layer 1, we want to select our main character here and choose no collision. So now I'm just going to add some quick movement. So Shift A, add myself a cube, move it up slightly, and we're going to make it dynamic, give it collision bounds. And here what I'm going to do is when I press W on the keyboard, I want my character to move forwards, so -Y in that direction. And then I also want to be able to look around with the mouse. So here mouse, and then movement, and here we want the mouse, and then a mouse look, and turn off Y, so we just have X. So now select the player rig, press numpad 3, and then Z to go into wireframe. We can just select it here, and then press numpad 5 to go into orthographic, and just move it down. Alright, then hold down shift, select the cube, Control P, and parent. So now back into texture view, and you'll see it hasn't lined up, so let's just move him in the center. So here on my character, I'm going to remove the idle animation at the moment, so just turn that off. And then I'm going to enable all the other animations that I've already set up. So just run, roll, and jump. Alright, so one last thing I'm going to do is add a quick texture to this to see if we are properly moving or not. So along in the materials, add a new, turn off specular, then go to the texture tab, new, open up a texture. Here we're going to press tab to go into edit mode, U and unwrap, and then we're going to press tab to go back into object mode. Now one last thing we need is a camera. So I'm going to line up my view, press numpad 5 to see what the camera will see. Something like this, Shift A, add ourselves a camera, Control Alt and numpad 0, and then just move it around a bit. So here what I'm going to do on the camera, add an always, add a camera, and we're going to add a height of maybe 25, add a maximum of 40, and a minimum of 10. And camera object can be our cube. Alright, so now if we press play, we should be able to move around like so. Now what we need to do is somehow transition between this scene and our main game. So to do that, on our hat selection object here, I'm going to select a keyboard, and then we'll add a AND controller. Join this in. It's going to be enter, and this one here is going to be a scene. Join that in, and here set scene, and we want to choose game. Now also what we need to do is we need to activate our module to save the hat. So under the controllers here, add a Python, choose module, and we need the name of this, equip, and then dot, and the function. Here, equip dot set hat. And then we'll join that in with the return as well on a tap. Then on our main game, we need to check whether these have been spawned in or not. So again, on this object here, we need to always go ahead and run a Python function. There's going to be a module, and this will just be equip.getHat. So this will immediately run this version and add the appropriate hat, and this one here will just save it. So now if we go to the main game, numpad 0, press play, and then choose a hat, maybe this one, press enter. We now have the set hat in our game. Now you'll notice the hat here is a lot bigger than it was in the original scene. So what we're going to do is select our game, and then layer 2, and we're just going to scale these down slightly. So now if we press play and select a correct hat and then press enter, we'll be added into our game here where we can run around with our new hat. Now you can repeat this method for basically any other bone in the body. So for example here you could add perhaps earrings or something to the ears. You could go ahead and add something to the back of the character. You could add something to his arms. Basically just parenting a empty to the bone and then parenting a new item to that empty. Now if you do ever run into any problems in your game, like the script isn't working or something, you can always check by going to Window, Toggle System Console, and this will go ahead and bring up a menu. So in here, if you just see Blender Game Engine started and Blender Game Engine finished, that means that there was no errors, and if there is any problems or errors in your script, they'll pop up between those two lines, and it will tell you what line the problem is on. So there we go guys, that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, or share down below. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated. But apart from that, I hope you guys found the tutorial useful. Have an awesome week, and I'll see you guys in the next one.